Waiting on YouTube now, and we're live.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman?
We're ready.
We are ready.
Good evening. I'm Steve Dodd. I'm chair of the McDowell Sonoran Preserve Commission, and this is our special meeting on Thursday, October 15th. This meeting of the McDowell Sonoran Preserve Commission is again being held electronically. The meeting is televised on YouTube, and you can watch the meeting there. Only written comments selected electronically at least 1 hour prior to the meeting will be accepted. A written public comment will be submitted by clicking on the click sign on the agenda items. So we're going to start with me calling the meeting to order. I'll call the meeting to order, and we will start with roll call. I'm Steve Dodd. I am here. Vice Chair Cynthia Winstrom.
This is Cynthia Winstrom, and I am here.
Commissioner Mark Hackbarth.
Mark Hackbarth is here.
Commissioner Lori LaPat Pelasco.
Lori LaPat Pelasco is here.
Commissioner Marsha Lips.
Marsha Lips is here.
Commissioner Jace McKeegan.
Jace McKeegan is here.
And Commissioner Tawana Parker.
Tawana Parker is here.
Yes. Okay. Next on the agenda is public comments. Citizens may address members of the Preserve Commission during public comment. This public comment time is reserved for citizen comments regarding non-agendized items. However, Arizona state law prohibits McDowell Sonoran Preserve Commission from discussing or taking action on an item that is not on the prepared agenda. Comments must be submitted at least 1 hour before the meeting. And as of now, we have no public comment requests submitted. So we will move on to the next item. Next item is the approval of minutes from our October 1st meeting. And are there any questions, any discussion or comments from any commissioners regarding minutes from the Thursday, October 1st meeting? Okay, there appear to be no questions or comments. So let's take a roll call. Is there a motion?
And Vice Chair.
Commissioner McKeegan, you have a question or comment? And Commissioner
I would make a motion to approve the minutes.
And this is Cynthia Winstrom. I will second that approval of the minutes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call. I'm Commissioner Dodd. I vote yes to approve. Commissioner Winstrom.
Cynthia Winstrom, yes.
Commissioner Hackbarth. Commissioner Hackbarth, we're looking for a yes or no on approving the minutes.
Yes, Commissioner Hackbarth says yes.
Great, thank you. Commissioner LaPat Pelasco.
Commissioner LaPat Pelasco says yes.
Okay, Commissioner Marsha Lips.
Commissioner Lips says yes.
Great, thank you. Commissioner McKeegan.
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Parker.
Yes.
Commissioner Parker says yes. Yeah, so the minutes are approved. Okay, next on the agenda is a frenzy request for December 2020, and Scott Hamilton will lead that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Good evening. I will be going through a quick presentation on this item, and then we also have Noah Doherty with us, who is the race director from Aravaipa Running, in the event that you have questions for him. So this item is agenda item number 5, which is to discuss and provide a recommendation to the Preserve Director regarding a special use request for the 9th annual McDowell Mountain Frenzy Trail Run. In the packet that you received, attachment 1 is the special use guidelines. And per those guidelines, events of this nature that are organized and have a fee need a permit. There is also an extra piece in those guidelines about competitive events. And specifically for competitive events, the preserve director will seek input from the McDowell Sonoran Conservancy as well as the McDowell Sonoran Preserve Commission in his consideration of issuing the permit for the event. So attachment 2 in your packet is the proposal that we received from Aravaipa. It is for a competitive trail running event planned for December 5th of 2020. In the past, the preserve director granted permits for the trail run from 2012 through 2019 annually, with input and support from the Conservancy and the Commission at those times. After those events, we try to really listen and see if we get any comments, good or bad, from the public. And for all those years the event has occurred, we've really received virtually no comments with no issues. The event will be staged entirely within our adjoining McDowell Mountain Regional Park. So the race start and all of the aid stations and that sort of activity happens in the county park with no impact to parking or public access at the preserve trailheads. There is a variety of distances offered during the event, and portions of the longer routes, the 50-mile and the 50-kilometer routes, pass through the preserve according to the map you see here, which was attachment 3 in your packet. And these proposed routes are the same as were permitted annually from 2014 through 2019. As with the last 8 years, the organizer will pay a fee to the city for this event. And this year we will be applying the new $5 per person commercial rate that we discussed last year. In accordance with the guidelines, we did forward the proposal to the Conservancy and received support from them. And then new to this year, like many other things we are doing this year, we have a new section here for the health and safety considerations related to COVID. And attachment 4 of your packet is the detailed plan that Aravaipa provided to us on how they will operate a safe event, covering topics such as wellness checks, face masks, social distancing, staggered start lines, and things of that nature. So again, we are looking for your consideration and recommendation to the preserve director on this event request. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions. And as I mentioned, we also have Noah on the line that from Aravaipa Running that could also answer any questions.
Okay, commissioners, any questions or comments on the frenzy request?
Vice Chair Winstrom. Vice Chair Winstrom and.
Okay, I'm looking for names. Hang on. Vice Chair Winstrom.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Dodd. 2 questions for you, please, Scott. Between 2012 and 2014, what were the changes that have now been consistent 2014 to 2019 moving forward? Was it major? Or?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, in the first 2 years, 2012 and 2013, there was a 50-mile option that Aravaipa had, but they did not add the 50K until 2014. So as in 2014, really the change that happened was adding that 50K and also including this section through the gooseneck into the 50-mile and 50K option. So the first 2 years, they basically were just using these trails down here, the Prospector Bell Pass area, kind of that interior area,
right,
and then up Thompson Peak and back. And then in 2014, expanded with the 50K option. And also we began including some of these trails in the gooseneck area into the permit.
Okay. Is there any consideration for the future that it would expand further into the preserve, or do we see this being a maximum use of preserve space?
You know, we'd always be open to listening to any proposal that anybody had. Right now, I don't believe Aravaipa is intending to expand. If that was ever a question, we would take it on a case-by-case basis. And, you know, honestly, the trails they are using now, we've been comfortable with because they are lesser used trails. You know, if a request came forward to use the Tom's Thumb Trail, we most likely wouldn't be too supportive of that idea just because of the usage that Tom's Thumb experiences.
Sure.
So these sections of trails that they have been using, it's actually worked out rather well because they are some of our lesser used trails by the general public and our regular users.
Terrific, thank you. One other quick question, probably for Scott or Noah. What is the anticipated attendance for 2020 considering COVID? Have you seen changes?
Commissioner Winstrom, the estimate for this year is 90 participants in the 50-mile course and 125 in the 50K. That totals 215. For comparison, last year we had a total of 262. The year before that was 254, and the year before that was 218. So the estimate for this year is slightly less than what we've had in the recent years.
Okay, but good, but considering all things, not bad. So that's great. Do you still anticipate the majority of the participants will be from out of state?
In the proposal, they were estimating right around 25% of the people to be from out of state and the other 75% to be locals.
Okay, thank you. That ends my questions. Appreciate your help.
Okay. Commissioner McKeegan, your hand was up.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to follow up on the immediately prior comments, I think it's rather critical for a submission like this that we're looking at trails on the backside and rather minimal use of the preserve area. I think that's one of the reasons why this event has gotten support from the commission in the past, and I think it's also one of the reasons why we haven't seen any complaints is that the applicant has made an effort to reduce its impact on the preserve, and I appreciate that, and I hope to see it go forward. I have a secondary comment, which is, and Scott, I'll look for maybe a little clarification for you on this, but I certainly had some concern that we've got this application. I know we're looking a couple months out for the event, but we've got this application for an event in the preserve. And simultaneously, at least at this point, the Conservancy, who does a lot of work for the benefit of the preserve and for the benefit of the city, is not offering things like guided hikes, due to the pandemic. So we're, I don't want to be seen as being preferential in any way. Did the Conservancy give you any input or any comments with respect to that sort of an outside vendor is offering an event in the preserve during a time, at least as we consider it now, the Conservancy really isn't able to do that.
Great question, Jace. Related to the Conservancy activities, we are, of course, now talking about how we could bring back things like the public hikes. In the meantime, over the summer, we have been doing C&M projects with the stewards, mainly because we're able to be out and dispersed and maintaining oftentimes well more than 6 foot distance between people. So we are having conversations with the Conservancy on how to bring back and engage other programs as we move through time here. And one thing that makes us feel comfortable with this permit request is even under normal circumstances, by the time the runners enter the preserve, and we think even more so now with more greatly staggered start times, the people are very spread out and dispersed. And oftentimes we think this is one of the reasons we've received very few comments pro or con over the years is, except for the fact that they'll have a number on them, they're so distributed in these back areas that they virtually go unnoticed.
The other, this is Croy, Commissioner McKeegan and Commissioners. The other distinction is this is not guided. You're not putting somebody with a group of 5 people and keeping them together for an extended period of time. Although we're looking at the options of getting back to that and aren't opposed to how we figure that out, this is really individuals, much as we have on a daily basis going out and enjoying trails within the preserve.
Right. I'm glad you guys are taking those things into account. I think they're important. And Scott, I agree with you. I think when you look at this proposal, like I said, besides the minimal impact on the preserve, by the time the folks are hitting the preserve, they're going to be spaced out even more so given the precautions that are put into place in terms of the staggered starts. So thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Parker, your hand is raised.
I like the fact that they have the COVID-19 guidelines included. A question regarding how will it actually be enforced on the day of the event?
You want to take that one, Noah?
Yeah, I can take that. Good evening, everyone. So we have on site our medical team, which we use at all our events. They assist with the wellness checks. So we basically will barricade off our starting areas. This is within the regional park, so I guess not technically on the Sonoran Preserve. Are you asking specifically about that or just at the event in general?
The event in general. So at some point they're going to enter the preserve. Just want to understand how the guidelines will be enforced when they're on preserve property.
Yeah, it's kind of, I guess we go through all of we tell everybody in advance, like we need to make sure social distancing is happening. Everybody's aware of the mask thing. I believe the mandatory mask situation has actually just become more normal for people at this point. So we're not battling that at our races. People just do it out of courtesy and for the safety of everybody else. So I think with that, it just kind of comes with the community, and they understand the only way we can hold this race is if you follow these rules. So if you break these rules, everything goes away. So I think it's kind of like a community policing, if you will. I don't have a specific answer as far as, like you guys had mentioned before, these runners are quite dispersed out there. And because of the terrain with the ups and downs and turns and stuff, there's not a lot of crowding. And I think that'll be even more apparent in 2020 with regards to COVID and people just being more cautious in general. So I think on the preserve aspect, I think that's kind of what we would expect to see.
And then one follow-up question for the overall event, what do you have in place for contact tracing in case it's needed?
Going back to if somebody tests positive, is that what you mean? Or just
if someone tests positive after the event, let's say later that day or the next day, you have runners or cyclists who become ill.
Yeah, so everybody signs, we have a questionnaire, and then we have a waiver, and then we have another COVID question. So everybody has to agree to these two. So one of them is to agree to stay home, and then another one is to agree to race and to be healthy. And then if something does happen, that you have to inform race officials immediately. And then we have all contact information of every participant, volunteer, staff, medical team. Everybody has full contact, address, email, cell phone numbers. And then we would just have to inform everybody, and hopefully we don't have to deal with that. But in the event we have everybody's contact information, and we would make it aware immediately to let people know.
That's great. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Hackbarth, your hand is up.
Yeah, I just had one question. You mentioned the liability release form. I assume it covers the city of Scottsdale for everything.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Hackbarth, we will have an insurance certificate from Aravaipa that obviously covers all liability issues and things like that. We have the city named additionally insured. We have them waive their right to subrogation. So it's from the insurance side, it is pretty well documented. And also the permit itself waives liability of the city that Aravaipa will sign. And that's standard with all of our guiding permits, photo permits. We follow that same process with all of the permits.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, there appear to be no other questions from commissioners or comments. What else do you need on this?
In prior years, we've had a recommendation from the commission to the preserve director for his consideration when writing the permit.
Okay. You want us to take a roll call?
Yeah, we would need a motion and a second
Okay.
and a roll call.
All right. What we're looking for is a motion that the Preserve Commission says, yes, we think this is a good idea. And we need a motion on that and a second from someone. Commissioner Winstrom?
This is Commissioner Wenstrom, and I will make a motion to accept the Scottsdale Frenzy for 2020 as laid out in this document, and the documents given to the Preserve Commission. It has been a successful event in the past, and I approve that and suggest that we go on with this for 2020.
This is Commissioner Pat Velasco, and I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call here. Commissioner Dodd, I vote yes. Commissioner Winstrom?
Yes.
Commissioner Hackbarth?
Aye.
Commissioner Lepat Velasco?
Lepat Velasco says yes.
Commissioner Lips?
Lips says yes.
Commissioner McKeegan?
Yes.
And Commissioner Parker?
Yes.
Great, we are unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's move on. Next up, we have a couple of presentations related to our planning for the preserve for the next 25 years, long-range planning. And first up under this heading is a presentation on restoration in the preserve from Tiffany Sprague from the McDowell Sonoran Conservancy.
And Mr. Chairman, I'm going to just very briefly just remind everybody that this first item, as far as that preserve policy, we've got the consistency with the purpose and management objectives, and we're looking at the next 25 years. And then the next slide identifies that we have this particular one focuses on the wildland, fire, invasive plants, and specifically the restoration project. And so that's what Tiffany is going to pick up from here and give us just a moment, and we will switch from this presentation to Tiffany's, and we will go forward with that. Tiffany, take it away.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
We can hear you.
Excellent. And can we see the presentation?
We can.
Excellent. All right, well, thank you, Troy. And thank you very much, Chairman Dodd and Commissioners. I'm delighted to be able to speak with you again. And tonight I'm going to give you a whirlwind tour of our restoration work. So to give you some context, this is a really good definition of what ecological restoration actually is. But essentially it's helping to recover areas after they've been damaged, The goal of this is to improve their ecological functioning and to restore the important services that they provide within that ecosystem. This applies to all kinds of damaged areas. And looking at this list, you likely recognize some of these that are on the preserve, such as old roads and trails that have since been closed, as well as social trails and illegal trails that are out there, past fires, and much more. So I'd like to put this in context from a global scale on why it matters, and then boil it down into why it matters for the preserve. So the information on here is likely no surprise to anybody. We all know that arid lands are vitally important. Not only are they nearly half of the world's land surface, but they also support a huge percentage of the world's population. They provide critical resources for wildlife and for people and for much more. But unfortunately, those areas are rapidly disappearing. This is due to a wide number of reasons. Development is one of the highest on there. This is a picture that was taken from the preserve of the urbanization that is gradually encroaching around the edges of the preserve. Agriculture, livestock grazing, and of course degradation due to natural pressures, as well as human cause such as climate change, exacerbate all of this and further degradation of our natural arid lands. And to make things more fun, of course, protecting these areas is very challenging, and that means that restoring them is challenging as well. We all know that we live in a very water-limited area, which means that getting plants to grow and restoring ecosystem functions is very challenging and takes quite a bit of effort and time. But on top of that, we also have a lot of variation that occurs between seasons, between years, between decades. And coupled with that, this is also very much an understudied system. We really don't know much about what works to protect these lands as well as what works to restore them once they become damaged. However, restoration is crucially important, so much so that the United Nations declared this coming decade as the decade of ecological restoration. And the reason for that is because they recognize all of the important services that these arid lands provide, those functioning ecosystems, the food production, and what we are well familiar with, quality recreation for everybody. So getting down into the preserve, we have this amazing resource that has been protected for decades. But there's still a number of areas out there that need to be restored. They have been degraded. And that includes those old roads and trails that have not yet come back to proper ecosystem functioning. On top of that, this is a heavily used area. The preserve sees nearly 1 million visitors every year, and that number is projected to increase over the coming decades. And of course, we have those urban pressures and those natural pressures and environmental pressures such as climate change that are further exacerbating that. One thing that I want to point out here, same thing that I pointed out with our non-native plant work, it's really important that we don't focus solely on the preserve. We need to be able to work across our boundaries so that we are sharing information and discovering ways to best manage these lands. And the preserve is actually a perfect model site for this, because what we are doing within the preserve not only directly helps the management of the preserve, but it's also informing what happens across the entire desert Southwest. So that's where we come in. And we have a multifaceted approach that we use in order to guide ecological restoration practices. So first, we are interested in identifying the sites that need to be restored within an area. We then want to determine what treatments are going to be most effective to restore those lands. And then we want to plan how to implement those and, of course, actually implement them. And so I'm going to give you a quick tour of the 5 different projects that we have related to these. So the first one is a project called Degraded Lands Mapping. And this is a way to identify areas that have been degraded and could be in need of restoration. So we developed a low-cost way for citizen scientists or volunteers to use GIS tools to remotely scan areas and identify areas that could be in need of restoration. From that, we can then identify site characteristics specific to that area, and then we can work with land managers in order to prioritize where restoration should occur. We all have limited resources and limited time, so we need to identify specific spots to focus our efforts. And once we have those specific spots, we can determine very specific recommendations and treatments for those areas. And we've done this within the preserve. So over the last couple of years, our volunteers have scanned the entire preserve. We had a list of areas that are shown here in yellow that the city had already identified as degraded lands in need of restoration, and we identified 66 additional sites, which are those in red. We were able to classify these by type, whether it be a trail, a road, or something else. If it's ongoing disturbance, such as a social trail or trails that are being widened as people continue to use them, or if it's past degradation, such as a closed road or trail, and also the ease of access, because again, we have limited resources and need to be able to concentrate our efforts. So we're now working with the city to identify the priority sites to be restored and determining what treatments to implement at those sites. So after we determine where those areas are that need to be restored, we need to determine what treatments actually work at those sites. And the best place to start here is to look at what's already been done. So within the preserve, there's a number of restoration areas that have already happened. The city and our construction and maintenance team have already gone out and restored a wide number of areas. And we were interested to know, are the common practices that they implemented really useful? So we selected a number of old roads that had been restored between 2010 and 2012. And we compared the different treatments that they used. And those treatments included surface treatments or ripping, where they dig up the first foot of soil to kind of remove that soil compaction. They transplanted cactus to keep people out, as well as to help stabilize soil. And they also used seeding treatments. And we got pretty mixed success in our results. The good news is that restoration is occurring and native plants are making a comeback on these old roads. Of course, non-native plants are too. But what we found is that the plant communities on these restored roads are actually very different from the surrounding natural community. And in large part, that's due to these succulent transplants or the cactus transplants that occurred. So in this picture, you can see that there are a number more cactus than there are in the surrounding natural landscape. And this road is, even though it's relatively restored, it's still a scar upon the landscape. So we wanted to further build upon these practices. And so we started a project using old trails that have been closed down in the 2C area in the Northern Preserve. And we wanted to investigate some additional treatments. So we still wanted to look at that ripping treatment, again, to break up the soil compaction. This picture on the right shows you what that ripping looks like. And then we wanted to investigate some additional seeding practices, including whether those seeds were purchased or if they were collected from under shrubs in the area, as well as when they were dispersed in these areas, so before winter rains or before summer rains. So this was a long-term project that we actually just finished our field work this past spring. We're still working on analyzing our data, but these are some preliminary results that I'm happy to share. So with the ripping treatment, that surface treatment, we found that it did improve water infiltration, which is good news for plants being able to recover. But unfortunately, that actually favored the non-native plants. And we found more non-native plant cover than native plants in these plots. In terms of seeding, we found that it did increase the number of native plants, but somehow it did not actually affect the amount of cover that those plants provided. So we're still teasing out some details in here and analyzing this, and I hope to be reporting on it within the next several months. So to build further upon that, we also recently joined this collaborative network called RestoreNet. It's led by the US Geological Survey, and they are interested in identifying restoration practices that work across a wide variety of different disturbance mechanisms, as well as throughout all of the North American deserts. And so these 4 sites here in blue, these are the ones that we oversee. One of these is in the preserve, and then 3 others are with our regional partners. And so we are working to investigate these restoration techniques. So this is a project that we just started this year, so unfortunately no results to share with you yet, but these are the treatments that we're looking at. So further building upon those surface treatments, so looking at mulch, digging pits, and building these connectivity modifiers. These each form different ways to trap seeds that are blowing in the wind, as well as alter the moisture regimes. And then we're looking at different seed mixes. So the idea with this is that as our world continues to warm due to climate change, we're interested in knowing if native species that are actually better acclimated to warmer environments are going to do better in these areas and be able to help us restore these sites as our world continues to warm. So again, no results yet, but hopefully we'll have some in the coming years. And then the last project that I wanted to touch on is our soil crust research. And honestly, this is the project I am most excited about. But just a quick background in case you aren't familiar with soil crusts. They are a vital part of the ecosystem. They're actually a community of organisms, cyanobacteria, moss, and lichen. They form little polyps on the ground you might see. You might have seen these little black polyps. Sometimes they just form a crust on the ground. They actually take many different shapes and sizes. But they are truly crucial to the environment. They prevent soil erosion, they fix nutrients to provide for plants, and much, much more. Unfortunately, these crusts are very easily lost from the system. Even just stepping off trail can destroy them, and they take decades to come back within the system. And unfortunately, when they are lost, we end up with situations like this. And I'm sure many of you who have been in the desert for a little while are all too familiar with these giant dust storms or haboobs that we get. And these are in large part due to the loss of soil crust due to development and other activities, which then allows this dust to blow. So to combat this, we have a three-tiered approach that we're using. First of all, we salvage our soil crust from areas that are going to be disturbed within the preserve, such as at Pima Dynamite Trailhead, where the trailhead is being built, which is where this picture is from. We then cultivate those or bulk them in a controlled setting. And we're testing different treatments to see what works best to grow out these soil crusts very quickly. We're looking at different soil types. We're looking at whether they're on jute or not for stabilization. And we're also looking at shading and climate control and how that influences what grows in these and how quickly they grow out. And we have been able to successfully grow out soil crusts within a matter of months compared with decades in the field, which is really exciting. And then the final part of that is we reintroduce them into the field. So we have a study site out at Granite Mountain where we are testing which of those cultivation treatments work best in the field. And we're also comparing that with direct transplant from the field. So taking soil crust from Pima Dynamite Trailhead and directly putting it onto the ground here. And then as kind of a side project with this, we're interested in knowing how this affects plant growth, because again, soil crusts are really important for plants. And so we're interested in knowing if that helps establish native plants in the area. So this is a project, again, that we just started, so we don't have any real results, but I am thrilled to report that together with our partners, we have done the first successful reintroduction of mature crusts in the Sonoran Desert. So that's already a huge accomplishment and one that I'm really excited about, and I can't wait to see where this project goes. So where do we go from here? So the work that we are doing, again, it's really important. We are learning a lot. We are able to implement true conservation strategies based on empirical data. But just as with our non-native plant work, there is so much more that needs to be done. There are so many more treatments that we need to investigate, so much information that we need to learn and share with our partners. And of course, there's all those areas in the preserve that need to be restored. But that is way too much to cover here. So I look forward to coming back at a future time and discussing some of our ideas with you. But with that, I am happy to take any questions.
Okay, Tiffany, thank you very much. As usual, a presentation chock full of great information. So thank you for that. Commissioners.
Blasco is hand up. Blasco.
Hey, thank you. Tiffany, that was great. Super exciting work you guys are doing. Just curious if you're going to be monitoring the microbial community at all, trying to, do it by gen sequencing or anything like that to understand how the various different approaches impact the microbial community.
Chairman Dodd, Commissioner, that is a fabulous question. We have a partner up at Northern Arizona University who is doing a little bit of that work, but most of that work is being done by Ferran Garcia at ASU, and we are working on hopefully partnering with him. He does have his own research going, but we're hoping that we're going to be able to kind of combine forces and be able to learn from both of these. So it's not something that we are directly engaged with, but it's all part of the big picture.
Okay, thank you, Tiffany. Commissioner Winstrom, you had a hand up.
Yes, thank you so much, Tiffany. Once again, thank you so much. You're so informative with these reports. I just am thrilled to hear this. My question is about soil crust because it's also near and dear to my heart, probably not to the depth of yours, but nonetheless, I know it's critical. And I think it's such a foreign topic to even desert dwellers, let alone people who come here to visit. And I'm wondering if, or what is currently available through the Preserve Conservancy as far as education about soil crust and maybe to the whole of the staff. Is this something that we need to look at from an educational perspective and maybe more signage or maybe an opportunity to teach? And because it is so critical and people don't understand the impact that to be able to put mature soil crust out and to reintroduce that in months versus years is critical. So I'll be quiet so you can answer.
Chairman Dodd and Commissioner, Thank you so much for that question. I can't tell you how much it delights me. The best I can say is that education is key to all of this work. If we want to be preserving this precious resource into the future, education is the best way to do so. With Soil Crust, we don't currently have a lot that we have been doing, but we are currently working on revamping our education program. And I sincerely hope that Soil Crust is going to feature a more prominent role. In terms of what the city can do and what the commission can do in order to help with that, I'm sure there's lots. I would welcome opportunities to discuss ideas, but I don't know if Scott or Croy or other commissioners have ideas on that.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner McKeegan, I think your hand was up next, and then we'll go to Commissioner Lips.
Thank you, Chairman. Tiffany, just to parrot everyone else's comments, awesome presentation, great data. I think these are the types of things the commission absolutely needs to hear on a regular basis, so we have a better understanding of the preserve and what's going on there. But you know, each of those areas you touched upon tonight, in some ways, each of them seems just like a monumental task. So what can you tell us about what assistance you have beyond the Conservancy and the stewards in terms of partners with NAU and ASU or anyone else for that matter to help us tackle these problems and reach a faster solution? Because I certainly hope it's not entirely on your shoulders.
Chairman Dodd, Commissioner McKeegan, thank you for that question as well. And yes, they are monumental tasks. The good news is they're also a lot of fun. So the brunt of this is certainly with our amazing stewards because they conduct the vast majority of the work. I also want to give strong kudos to our partners who are constantly working with us on this, constantly coming up with new ideas and ways to streamline the work that we have. But it is a group effort. It takes a village for certain. And I cannot, again, stress enough the importance of working with partners across our boundaries. And so while they are monumental tasks, they are something that's achievable as we come up with new ideas and hopefully are able to grow the work that we are doing. We will certainly need more resources than what we currently have.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Lips.
Hi, Tiffany. That was a great presentation. This is Commissioner Lips. I did want to mention, because Cynthia brought it up, we have had lectures on soil crust done by Dan Gruber a couple of times a year, probably up until the last year when things have changed so drastically with COVID and our lecture series had to be basically canceled. So the one thing about that particular presentation, though, was it was never done on video. So, that would probably be a very easy fix, is to set up Dan somehow to be able to do those lectures. He also did great hikes where the main topic was about soil crust. So I'm kind of obsessed about it because it was one of my favorite lectures and one of my favorite hikes that I would go out on all the time. But anyway, it was a great presentation, and it's just so wonderful to see the Conservancy moving this forward in such an important way. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Lips.
This is Scott. One thing that I would add on the question that Commissioner Wenstrom had about education is, this is very preliminary at this point, but at the Pima and Dynamite trailhead, we do have in our plans to plan and construct an interpretive trail there. And not too far outside the trailhead, there's a hill that I know our C&M crew and our researchers will know. It's affectionately called Fountain Grass Hill. It's kind of a small hill, but it's been over the years infested with fountain grass that has been removed by the work of the Conservancy. There's been a lot of other damage done to that hill. When it was open to vehicular access, people basically drove all over it. So it's in a really good location to potentially use for the interpretive trail. And some of the initial conversations that we've had, again, very preliminary, is potentially the theme of that interpretive trail becomes restoration and invasive plants and it could include many of the topics that Tiffany covered at the last meeting, that she's covered at this meeting, and could really provide an excellent opportunity to put those topics front and center, not only where people could read about them on sign panels, but we potentially could include actual restoration activities with the trail so people could see it with their own eyes, exactly what it means and what it looks like and how it works and why it's important.
Okay, thank you, Scott. No other commissioner questions or comments, so we will move along from here. Tiffany, once again, thank you for the information you shared tonight. Very, very good.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Okay, we will move on next to, as we continue talking about future care of the preserve. Scott, I believe you had maintenance and operation costs follow up.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, commissioners, following up on our conversation at the last meeting, in the policy review process, the long-term cost projections for the day-to-day operations of the preserve is one of our topics. And this is the slide that we looked at the last meeting that has the budget numbers in it for the various things that we spend money on to operate the preserve. And the commission had asked specifically about this $130,000 item for maintenance. And what I did was dig a little bit deeper into those figures and pulled the actual costs from 2019 and 20. So this was July 1 of 2019 through June 30th of 2020. The actual cost was $141,000. And dissecting this a little bit more, you can see at the top of the list there, custodial services by far is the biggest chunk of that money at $90,000. Digging deeper into that, we have 6 trailhead sites that have restrooms for a total of 42 stalls. That would be toilets and urinals combined at those sites. Roughly about 2,500 square feet of restroom space. I did a little analysis of the distance between the trailheads, because this runs basically from Lost Dog all the way to Fracefield. That's a 36-mile distance if you just drive it straight from one trailhead to the next. We clean the restrooms from May through September, 1 time per day, and then we clean them twice per day from October through April. So when you start doing that math, the number of visits racks up pretty quick. The distance between the facilities becomes rather significant. These costs also include all of the cleaning supplies of the custodian, as well as all of the hand sanitizer, hand soap, paper towels. We've gotten away from using paper towels at most of our facilities in lieu of hand dryers, and also includes the toilet paper. So that $90,000 basically keeps the restrooms clean across the whole preserve on a year-round basis. That next number that you see for entry gate repair, we have 10 entry and exit gates. Most of our facilities only have 1, but we've got a couple that have 2. There's a separate gate for the entry and the exit. They tend to be rather complicated electromechanical devices. They've got computer parts and wires and mechanical parts and gears. So you may have experienced this yourself. Sometimes you're there waiting for the gate to open in the morning and it just doesn't open. So that $14,000 a year is the money that we spent basically repairing the gates for whatever issues may have occurred to them. And then as we go down the list, I won't read it all off, but the smaller percentage numbers are for various trades of plumbing. A lot of that is removing clogs from toilets and urinals and dog water fountain drains, replacing valves. Then we've got the electrical and then other items down the list, a lot of which in those smaller dollar amounts are routine maintenance, replacing filters in our air conditioning units, doing the routine maintenance on the roofs, checking that AED line item, We have AEDs at 6 of our sites that have to be checked monthly to make sure that the batteries are good and all the parts are there. So this is that breakdown per your request at the last meeting, and I would be happy to answer any questions you might have about it.
Okay, commissioners, any questions or comments? Commissioner Winstrom.
Oh, thank you so much, Scott, for preparing this for us. It's really helpful, and my goodness, it does really shed light on the custodial services expense. I know that that's something that we've talked about in the past. Is there another way to handle this? And I also know that that was a definite no. So I'm not sure that there's a way to work with this. It's a big expense, let's face it. But I would be open to any comments that you might have, any investigation you might have done or research as far as, is there another way to handle, is there a better way to manage the costs, et cetera. But again, thank you for doing this breakdown.
Commissioner, Vice Chair Wenstrom, commissioners, I think one of the things here is when you look at it in the context of how big we are, as far as square footage and the number of facilities and the distance required to cover them and our expectations for them to be maintained at a high level. It basically comes down to $3.70 a stall every time cleaned. And again, within that, you're getting all the materials, you're getting all the supplies. And so I think that's just something to keep in mind. And we do competitive bidding through these services. And we, as we look at it, we think that cost is really quite reasonable and might actually be low at times when we're not getting great service. And so just keeping that in context, I think it's important. Yes, for any of us on a budget and what we deal with at our house or whatever, it seems like a big number. But when you look at it to what goes on within the entire city of Scottsdale, maintaining things, this number seems pretty reasonable for what's going on. And I'm not trying to defend it. And we always are working with our facility staff on, are there ways to be more efficient and lower costs. But I do just want to make sure we think of it in context of kind of the order of magnitude of what we're managing here too. You've got some other hands up. Commissioner McKeegan.
Here we go. Other hands. And I'm not sure the order here, so bear with me. Commissioner McKeegan.
Thank you, Chairman. Scott and Croy, just a 30,000-foot question on this. Are these kind of consistent figures over time, as opposed to one-offs?
Yeah, we'd have to go back and do a little bit more historical to be certain of that, Commissioner. But I do believe what has happened is, of course, we've grown quite dramatically in just the last few years, and so the numbers have gone up. But that's really based upon the growth. And we can go back and do a comparative, but that's stuff that our facility staff analyze. And so I don't think we're going to find that this is out of sync with what's going on elsewhere. And then keeping in mind that this includes, having to get all the way out to Granite Mountain to clean trailheads. This isn't like you just cleaning something here in downtown Scottsdale. You're covering pretty much the full run of the city here.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Lips, you have a question or comment?
Yes, this is Commissioner Lips. I didn't hear the previous, I heard the previous conversation, but I wasn't at the October 1st meeting. I presume this does not include Pima dynamite. So these costs are only going to go up slightly.
Right, that is correct. We will provide, one of the next steps is we will project the costs, but that's a given. Again, we'll be putting in, I think, 6 stalls total at Pima dynamite, or maybe it's 8.
6 or 8.
We'll have an update. Part of this process will explain what our costs are today, and then we're going to project that into the future, not just based upon cost of living increases, but facility increases, which are going to be minimal once we get past Pima dynamite. We're not, we don't have other trailheads listed out there. And so some of those, the growth that we've seen over the past 10 years will be just because of cost of living, not because of increased facilities.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Vice Chair Winstrom, do you have additional question or comment?
Just a comment. And Croy, thank you for that dose of reality. I really appreciate that breakdown, since I had not done that math myself that quickly. But at 370 a stall, did I get that right? 3.70?
That's correct. That's
okay.
That's our rough calc.
Yep, that's good. I think that's doggone hard to beat.
And again, it's not meant to be critical. I mean, all of us look at it and go, "Oh, that's a big number," and
right.
You think about it. But when I think Scott did the calc here, what is it? By way of doing it, they clean 24,108 stalls a year at this because of coming in either once or twice a day. And so, when you put it in that context, it's like, oh, okay, yeah. And so we just wanted to give you a little bit of that context to understand, and hopefully that does help.
I really appreciate that, and my hat is off to them. That's a phenomenal, and that's a huge job to take care of. Thank you so much for all your research on that and report.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. We'll move on from there.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will continue on. I have a virtual grab bag here of items that I wanted to run through real quickly, just to update you on some things. Out at the Gateway Trailhead, we had paved the drive aisles quite a few years ago and left the parking pads as stabilized DG. But over the years, they have worn down. They've worn down through use and the rainwater running over them. We've had areas like this pretty prolific, where we have pretty significant lips and drop-offs and things and rivulets forming in the DG. So if you've been out there recently over the last few weeks, in two of the major drive aisles closest to the building, we've removed the DG and replaced it with concrete. So you will notice that new improvement. We also, this is kind of a minor item, but we're oddly excited about it. This is a recycle enclosure that we've been programming into the newer trailheads, but now we're circling back to Gateway and Lost Dog to build them. Obviously a concrete pad, and then between these poles, there will be steel panels. Basically just a small enclosure where those really large mauve colored recycle cans can have a place to live, not only where they're always in the same place, but also it will keep them from blowing over. We've had numerous instances where monsoon winds or just heavy winds in general will just cartwheel the giant container across the parking lot and then leave a trail of disposable water bottles all the way out across the desert. So our staff and contractors are very excited to have a landing place for our recycle containers. Also at Gateway, there's a portion near the ADA parking stalls. This was a stabilized DG section of trail, but it constantly eroded as the water ran across it. I know the C&M crew had helped us fix it numerous times. So we decided to replace about 40 feet of that trail with the exposed aggregate concrete to provide a permanent ADA accessible solution to that problem. Jumping over to Lost Dog, this is the equestrian parking lot. Same issues here with the stabilized DG, with it breaking down and eroding. So we are removing that DG and replacing it with stabilized AB, which is essentially stabilized gravel. It's the material that they use underneath concrete surfaces and underneath asphalt surfaces. This will be the same material if you're familiar with the equestrian area at the Fracefield Trailhead that we built last year, as well as the main parking areas at Granite Mountain are currently made of that stabilized AB. So we're making that conversion. Just real quick mention, I know I've mentioned this before, we now have the trail sign replacements in our hands, and John Lolette will be starting the process soon of getting out into our phase 1 area and replacing those directional signs. There's about 250 signs, not all on different points. Some of these posts have 3 or 4 signs on them. So it will be a wide scale replacement of all of those signs that were originally put in 2013. Pima dynamite, I showed you this picture last time of the side boxing. Trees have now been bottom boxed and removed from the holes and placed into the nursery. We took it another step further and we boxed 40 or 50 creosote bushes, and this is a Mormon tea. There's some really nice Mormon tea plants on this site. They are not required to be salvaged per the city's native plant ordinance, but we just couldn't let them go. They're such beautiful plants that we decided to put them in 24-inch boxes and add them to the nursery. We did build our box culvert. This is looking south. The gravel parking lot that's open for public access is back here. This is the southern driveway, will come up and across here. There's a little bit of a wash that flows across, so this box culvert will provide an all-weather crossing. Also interesting with this photo is it shows how much grading is going to occur on the site, that the road will actually be on top of this culvert by a couple of feet. So gives you kind of a sense. This is a photo I took standing on top of the 20-foot high pile of rocks and gravel and just all the miscellaneous material that was left behind by the excavating company that used to lease this property from the state. So it was going to be a major expense removing it from the site. We also are going to have the need to bring the aggregate base, that AB that goes underneath the parking lot, back in. So rather than trucking all that rock out and then bringing all the rock back in, we decided to bring in, this is a rock crusher. This is $1 million machine, but as you can see, it's super effective. The gentleman in the excavator back here is basically taking that pile, that huge pile of all that debris, putting it into one end of the crusher, and it comes out the other end as really nice gravel with the fines in it that can compact really well underneath the concrete and asphalt surfaces.
And that was a cost savings. We didn't buy the $1 million machine, but it's a cost savings because, and it's, Scott, you described it's a lower impact on fossil fuels because you're not running all the trucks taking material out and bringing it back in.
Exactly. This photo is a little bit farther. Actually, you can see that last photo that had the excavator in it. There it is back there. So this is about where the main building will be, looking southwest across the site. It's currently in the stage where it kind of looks like a bomb went off, but the trees are out of the holes. That's what a lot of these marks were from, where the trees were removed. So the contractor is starting to rough grade across the entire site. So we're kind of hitting that point now where you're going to see some changes happening pretty rapidly from here on forward. Just a real quick mention, our gravel parking lot that is open for public access at Pima and Dynamite. We've had our field services crew from the city in there, touching up the asphalt milling, smoothing it out a little bit. If some of you may remember, in this corner down here, there used to be a really large depression that when it would rain would essentially turn into a pond. We've gotten rid of that. And really what our efforts are is to, within the current footprint, maximize the parkability of it. We are also, in the next several weeks, going to be putting down some white lines around various parts of this parking lot so that we can give people a little more sense of order as far as them parking. We won't have any issues with people getting parked in or losing capacity. This is also another quick mention about Pima Dynamite. This is the trailhead location of what we were just looking at in those photos. You can see currently we have this unmapped area of the preserve, and what we're working on now with Doug Hansen from Cuddy Mountain Trail Company, and we will be reconvening our phase 3 trail working group in the near future, is looking at how to bring the Rawhide Wash, Axle Grease, Hawk Nest, and Latigo trails down into the site. We've mentioned this before. Our goal is to have numerous choices of trails for people when they leave the trailhead, that they can pick different trails right out of the gate The goal is to disperse the use and spread people out as quickly as possible. And then I mentioned earlier, the idea of the interpretive trail. That little blip right there is the affectionately termed Fountain Grass Hill. And the possibility, you can see it's a pretty close distance out of the trailhead itself to be able to extend an interpretive trail out and around that little hill with the potential theme of invasive plants and restoration. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Croy for a couple of quick items.
And these were just a couple items we talked about really in the last meeting. We are working on them, but we'll have updates at the November meeting. The working team for land acquisition, Jace and Scott and I visited. We'll be getting back with some ideas on that for our next presentation. We're also going to do something very similar on the access areas. And then we talked a little bit about the shaded amphitheaters and the public process. We've had an initial discussion with our public information staff. We're doing some brainstorming on how to do both virtual and potentially public oriented meetings that could be some face-to-face opportunities. And there was also a question that had come up, I believe, from Vice Chair Wenstrom at the last meeting about looking at options for getting back to having some meetings. We are reaching out and having some, those discussions are beginning to occur. I believe the council may do something in December along that line or sooner. Our next meeting of the commission will offer the opportunity that we don't have right now, where public comment is required to be submitted in writing an hour before the meeting. The next meeting will offer the opportunity for people to 90 minutes before the meeting request the ability to speak at the meeting. They will then be sent a Zoom connection. We'll have another layer of management behind the scenes that will check people in. And if they want to speak on item number 6 or number 7, they'll be keyed up. We'll coordinate it obviously with the chair, and folks will be able to speak directly to you for their 3-minute allotment. So there are some things that are changing. I believe we'll have some more updates for you in November with some opportunities. Obviously, all this will be conditioned upon the numbers staying positive for opportunities to have some type of public meetings. But those are all things that we're starting to look at and anticipate. So just wanted to give you an update that we'll have. We are looking at it in more detail at the next meeting.
Okay, you're done.
We're done with staff.
Okay,
they've got a hand up from Commissioner McKeegan.
Commissioner McKeegan.
I will make it quick, but I just want to go back to Pima Dynamite for a minute. And it's just a comment, which is, you know, I think the facilities we have in the preserve are first rate, and that's not an accident. It's from planning. And what you guys described there of taking a disturbed area, taking the rocks and the gravel in that disturbed area, being able to reuse it, cutting down on trucking, reducing costs. I mean, that's just perfect. Like that's a brilliant job by everyone who was involved with that. And I'm just really impressed with the attention to detail there, and want everyone to know that. Thanks.
And I'll just follow up, Commissioner McKeegan. There's some accolades that go back to the commission. Obviously, members, those who have been with the commission for a while, remember some site tours that were out there, and we asked commission input on, you know, what areas did we prefer to go, and that we had a disturbed area that was near the power lines. Did we want to be there? And, you know, there was input. And so the commission is part of that planning and that input, and part of the direction that leads to how we end up where we are. So our thanks as well to you and Active Commission and being involved in helping provide input.
Okay, thank you. Before we adjourn, are there any other commissioner comments or questions?
We do have upcoming
we got
dates.
one more thing before we do that.
Yeah, sorry.
That's
We'll put that in. So this is just a reminder what's coming up. We'll be back in 3 weeks with land acquisition and a cultural plan overview. And Tiffany will be joining us, I believe, again on the monitoring of the preserve habitat. And then we've got plans for the 19th of November as well. And we'll do an update on the process. We'll look at funding options and hope to have Gina Kirkland back with us from the Treasurer's Office. And then we're working on some stuff with the wildland, with our fire department on wildland fire and updates on that. And then the preserve habitat connectivity will be another presentation that I believe Tiffany will be prepared to present. So all of that, and then we'll start thinking about the first of the year, and we'll get back with you in more detail on that in the month of November.
Okay, thank you, Troy. Finally, any last commissioner comments or questions? I see no hands. So do we have a motion to adjourn?
Sure, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Commissioner LaPat Palasco.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Hackbarth will second that.
Right, thank you, Commissioner. We need a roll call here. Commission Chair Dodd votes yes. Commissioner Winstrom.
Commissioner Wenstrom, yes.
Commissioner Hackbarth.
Commissioner Hackbarth votes yes.
Commissioner LaPat Palasco.
Commissioner LaPat Palasco votes yes.
Commissioner Lips. Commissioner Lips.
Looks like you're muted, Marcia.
I'm sorry. Commissioner Lips votes yes.
Thank you. Commissioner McKeegan.
Commissioner McKeegan votes yes.
And Commissioner Parker.
Commissioner Parker, yes.
I believe that is unanimous. So thank you all. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for continuing to make the best of what we got here with our online meetings. Thank you. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Okay.